I think the biggest thing that goes into game development, it's what kind of character or enemies you make. That's what makes it difficult, because you may like say you play Legend of Zelda, you may get inspired to make like skeleton enemies, or you may get inspired to do zombie type of enemies. The only bad thing about that is it's done a lot. So you have to kind of like be creative in that sense. That's what makes game development, I think, difficult, is being creative and coming up with new characters, coming up with enemies that kind of make sense, or kind of unique in that sense. And it could be kind of creepy and awkward. Like you can make certain like monsters, like a crocodile face and then a hippo something, kind of like a chimera. I don't know if you guys chimera, which is kind of like a mixture of like a lion and then a zebra, and then it's kind of like a bunch of creatures, right, in there that makes it a crazy monster. And I think a lot of people in game development, or players I should say, like that. And that's kind of like where creativity comes in, and where what makes game development really difficult to kind of decide on what you want to do, because there's certain things you can and can't do, right? Like I can't do certain like items like that beholder, like this guy, right? It's cool. I really like it. I like this beholder. The only problem is, it's already done by Dungeons and Dragons. I could get in trouble for the IP, and it probably will, right? I may have to pay something for it. All right. There's a few things you have to be careful with. Also, dumb thing, but Red Cross. I know we talked about this before. So whenever you do have the Red Cross, you cannot do a red H, right? Because that's considered a red or a cross, right? The Red Cross is copyrighted, and if you do have it in your game, you can get in trouble. I know, what's it called? Prison Architect? Yeah. Prison Architect got in trouble for it. For their health icons that had the Red Cross. Right? Nobody thought about it when they came up with the game. I was like, it's just a Red Cross. It means health. But yeah, they got in trouble for it. And there was a reason why you see a lot of games, they have, instead of a red cross, they have a white cross. Or instead of an H, maybe they have like a white H. Different sort of version that people don't think about. I think that's what makes game development kind of hard. It's not so much that you don't have the creative freedom because of the IP issues, or the other structures you have to think about, or the creativity. I think that's what makes it difficult, because when you're making your game, you really don't want to have like any stops or limits to how far you want to go. You just want to make your game. You don't care like, oh, it's gonna have this, it's gonna have that. You don't want to think, I better not do this because, oh, I can get in trouble with this other game, or this sort of thing could happen. And I think that's what makes it hard. But my suggestion, if you want to release a commercial game, and if you have some doubts about your character, your enemies, or what kind of project you're making, consult an attorney. Consult someone that's more professional, right? They may know what kind of soft subjects or topics you might get into. And I think this is where the other topic about this kind of relies on AAA industries, where they use kind of like third parties, like aka Sweet Baby. I know it's not really popular to talk about Sweet Baby. I mean, they haven't been doing great games as of lately, right? The fans don't really like, the players particularly do not like it. It's been too soft, right? And sometimes you kind of like misjudge what it's considered soft or not too soft. All right, a lot of times you say, can we put this into the game? And then maybe a third party might say, no, you can't do that, right? You might offend somebody, right? But then when you think about it, the players want to see that. And it could be something simple as blood, for example, right? Or maybe kind of like an execution or something crazy, kind of like how, in games are, right? You don't see too many of that, sometimes because AAA industries just don't want to get in trouble releasing a game. And having to offend people, I think it's the worst. And I think this is why corporations came into, because they don't want to get into a lawsuit, right? And I think really if you think about it as an indie game developer, like myself or anybody really, right? You want to make the most. You have to kind of think of what kind of basic type of game you want to use. You don't want to use a player that might offend somebody, or maybe in some other country, right? They see that, oh, you can't do that sort of thing, right? Also, the title of your game. You have to think what kind of title won't offend a few people. I know I have a game called Oh Shit Boulder, and certain, actually, if you guys believe it or not, certain countries that can't play that because it has the word shit, right? For minors, that would be considered a bad word in different countries. So that could be a banned game in my end, and I had no idea. So you can get in trouble because of bad words. So you don't see too many, bad word games often on Steam. It's very rare that you see them, but they're there, right? But they get kind of like blacklisted a little bit in certain countries or certain areas. So you have to think about that too. You have to think what kind of games I can use. But there's a lot that goes into game development that you don't really think about at first, and it kind of like ruins the creativity or the process of making games, where you don't think, oh, I'm just gonna create this monster, right? Who cares, right? I got the inspiration from this game. It's not gonna be an issue. But later on the road, when you release the game, you realize, oh shoot, I'm getting, sued, or I'm getting in trouble because of this. Alright? It could happen. I'm saying it's gonna happen, but it's something to kind of keep in the mind. Kind of keep in your mind. It's like, I can release this, but it's better good to check. Obviously, I'm not saying you should, downsize or change the game in a way that, it's gonna, players are not gonna like it either as well. So you have to keep in mind player first, but also the game industry first, or in other words, your studio also comes first, right? So when you do release a game, keep it for the player, but also keep it for yourself, so you're safe in a way. That's the best way. I think that's the best alternative to avoid any issues with making games. The coding's easy. I think once you do coding, it's fine. The art style, it's fine. I mean, doing all that stuff, the marketing, I think that's the easier part. I know for a few people that might be hard, but once you get a rhythm to it, it becomes easier with practice. But yeah, your studio and making money, I think that's the hard part, right? Releasing something that's good, that you can say, I like this as a individual. That's the hard part, right? I think releasing something cool that you like as a studio, as a solo studio, or team, it's important, but also what the players like. So you have to keep that balance, right? You have to, okay, too much blood or too little blood, right? Too little execution or not any execution, or those are the challenges that go into game development that makes it difficult for me, and I think for everybody else that doesn't. All right.